What is poppin' YouTube? Back again with another video. Today we are doing my week 6 waiver wire targets as well as week 5 recap. Got a special message at the end for all of you subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, hit the like button, and let's go. So the first player we need to talk about today is Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase was a big letdown up until this week. Last week started to get back on track, but the fact that you have to draft him in the top 3 or 4 picks of your fantasy football draft, and he's just been letting you down because of this Bengals offense, has kind of been frustrating. But today, it was hard to imagine that anyone was going to surpass DJ Moore's stats on Thursday night, but Ja'Marr Chase did that with 52 fantasy points, 15 receptions, 192 yards, and 3 total tutties. Absolutely amazing statistics for Ja'Marr Chase. We don't need to harp on it. Dude's an elite level baller. Hopefully you bought low when we've been talking about him as a trade target the last 2 weeks. Ja'Marr Chase, elite level fantasy football wide receiver, of course, going forward. DJ Moore, Justin Fields. You've heard everybody. You saw the Thursday night game. Amazing to see those two get the connections, to see Justin Fields get back on the board. Absolutely amazing. Travis Etienne pretty much leading the way for running backs this week with 35 fantasy points, 26 attempts, 136 yards, 2 total touchdowns. The thing that we love to see in addition to those touchdowns and those carries was the 4 receptions, because we've been talking. Travis Etienne reminds us a lot of Alvin Kamara. He hasn't been used out of the backfield as much in the passing game. Really impressive. Zach Moss, 33 fantasy points. Now, we were telling a lot of people not to start Zach Moss because we did not know what those splits between him and Jonathan Taylor were going to be like. Well, clearly they are taking the preseason approach with Jonathan Taylor. They gave him a few touches, but they still gave Zach Moss 23 touches for 165 yards and 2 total touchdowns. Now, I think this is a great opportunity to go sell high on Zach Moss because Jonathan Taylor got the contract. They're going to be using him a lot more. He's eventually going to be the bell cow. But Zach Moss, elite level handcuff. And right now, until we see Jonathan Taylor take a significant portion of this workload, we're still going to be having to roll out Zach Moss. Jared Goff, 33 fantasy points, looked great. Him and Sam Laporta connection. Tyreek Hill had 32 fantasy points. We could have seen a bigger day for Tyreek Hill, but I felt like even still, 8 receptions for 181 yards and 1 touchdown. Great. Josh Allen out there in the London game, 31 fantasy points. Jalen Hurts had 29. Joey B had 28. Desmond Ridder, shout out to Desmond Ridder. Shout out to Kyle Pitts for having a good day as well. Desmond Ridder and Kyle Pitts, 2 great players. Breece Hall, we talked about Breece Hall earlier in the week as a sit. Once we got reports that Breece Hall was going to be getting a full head of the snaps, we actually bumped him up in the rankings. We talked about him if you asked any questions in the chat. Breece Hall was a start for us this week, so we did like to see the 22 carries for 177 yards, 1 total touchdown. Adam Theilen balling out ahead of Stephon Diggs. Those 2 old Minnesota Vikings teammates both had 27 fantasy points this week. George Pickens as well had 26 fantasy points. So there was a bevy of great performances. Devon Achane also had a really great day with 22 fantasy points. Patrick Mahomes with 23. Travis Kelce, on even that bum high ankle, had a really great day with 23 fantasy points. So it was a great day for your fantasy football team. So let me know down below how your team did, what adjustments you need to be making heading into week 6. Let's talk about some players you need to target on the waiver wire this week. The first player we're going to talk about is Rashee Rice. If you had subscribed and been on the channel, you would have heard me on Saturday talk about how Rashee Rice was a mustache candidate. You would have heard about it last Saturday. So 2 weeks in a row, he was in our mustache videos because we continue to believe that Rashee Rice was the most talented wide receiver in this Kansas City offense. Now, it's hard to be the most talented wide receiver in the Kansas City offense because at the end of the day, Travis Kelce is still the wide receiver 1, tight end 1, however you want to view it. But Rashee Rice had his best day. He had 4 catches for 33 yards and found the end zone against the Vikings. So Reese has now scored double-digit points 3 times in 5 total games. When you're catching passes from Patrick Mahomes, it's just a huge advantage for any wideout on a week-to-week basis, and it really makes Rashee Rice an attractive addition. Now, we said that all last season, and really none of those guys, when we're talking MVS, when we're talking Juju, when we're talking Sky Moore, when we're talking Kadarius Toney, none of them were able to put up solid weekly fantasy football production. But we've been talking about for a while that this offense needs a wide receiver that's just a solid contributor on a week-to-week basis, and I think Rashee Rice is turning into that guy. When you get drafted in the 2nd round, one of these guys eventually had to click, and sadly, it was not Sky Moore. It looks like it's going to be Rashee Rice, so he's definitely someone that we're targeting on the waiver wire. My next guy is going to be Chuba Hubbard. We talked about Chuba Hubbard also in our stash video, but he's making it back. And Chuba, it's getting to the point now with Miles Sanders that Chuba Hubbard is the more efficient running back. He is starting to get a lot more of the touches. According to PFF, Hubbard took the majority of the snaps against Detroit on short yardage plays. So when we're talking, when they needed to get those surefire yards, they were giving the ball to Chuba. But on the flip, Miles Sanders was also used a lot more on 3rd downs. And so knowing that and acknowledging that Miles Sanders it's still a committee. Miles Sanders is getting those PPR receptions, but I do think Chuba Hubbard, he continues to impress, continues to get on the field a lot more often, so he would be my 2nd waiver wire target if I don't need a receiver and Rashee Rice is already off the board. My 3rd target on the waiver wire is going to be Tyjae Spears. We've been talking about him on our waiver wire videos for a while just because he's really getting the same amount of touches as Derrick Henry, and to be completely honest, he looks explosive. This almost reminds me of the Zeke Tony Pollard backfield we talked about a few years ago. He's still one of the team's most explosive offensive players. I showed that against Colts when he scored on that 19-yard run. He leads the Tennessee backfield with 4 catches and a solid 16.9 fantasy points after enter week 5. So there is some standalone flex value for Tyjae Spears, which is insane to say because we've been seeing Derrick Henry be the absolute bell cow, but I feel like they are definitely using Henry sparingly, knowing that he's older, knowing that depending on how the season goes, I think they want him in those more high leverage situations. For if any reason Derrick Henry were to miss any time, Tyjae Spears is looking like an absolute player that could contribute for you and have some high scoring fantasy point games. So if you missed out on Devon, if you missed out on Jaleel McLaughlin, like I feel like Tyjae Spears is another one of these type of smaller, running, more explosive type running back that if you get him in the right system and you get him at the right time, he could really pay off for you down the line. My next player we're going to be talking about picking up is Jonnu Smith. And this is nasty. This is nasty because we were big on Kyle Pitts going into the season. And Kyle Pitts had his absolute best day, but he had another strong day Jonnu Smith did with 6 catches on 7 targets for 67 yards with this win over the Texans. Like I said, Kyle Pitts also had a great game, but if you need tight end, the tight end landscape is absolutely nasty right now. Jonnu Smith potentially could be someone that you're targeting. He's only owned in 16% of leagues currently right now, so he would be a great target for you. My next tight end player that I think you should be potentially targeting off waiver wire is Logan Thomas. Thomas absolutely went off, catching 9 of 11 targets for 77 yards and a touchdown, 20.7 fantasy points for my man Logan Thomas this week. And when you're seeing that type of production, when you're seeing those type of targets with the athlete that we know Logan Thomas is, the real disadvantage that Logan Thomas has had pretty much the last few seasons has been just his injuries. So if he can stay healthy, he's got Sam Howell, who is this second-year quarterback who absolutely loves to check it down to the tight end. I think Logan Thomas could be a tight end 1 based on matchup, based on his situation the rest of season. Now, moving forward to some other players that you need to be targeting on the waiver wire. Josh Downs, of course, his explosive plays today with Gardner Minshew. He scored 13 fantasy points in the last 2 of 3 games. So there's a good chance that someone picked him up last week. If not, Josh Downs should be someone that you target because when you start to see these rookie wide receivers really start to get the ball rolling, this is when we want to get the rookie wide receivers because we know that they are absolutely about to explode. Quickly become the second best fantasy football option on the Colts behind Michael Pittman Jr. Based on matchup, he could potentially be a starter for you week in and week out, especially with all these bye weeks happening over the next few days. And we're going to give you 3 more potential waiver wire options. KJ Osborn would be someone that you could consider, especially with us not knowing what's happening with Justin Jefferson with that hamstring that he did hurt today in the game versus the Chiefs. Deontay Foreman, he's been a healthy scratch with Khalil Herbert suffering the ankle injury and Roschon Johnson dealing with concussion. Deontay Foreman could step in this next week as the starter. And with the Bears offense being pretty electric, that could be someone we potentially target. DJ Chark, another player that we also like. So like I said, I gave you guys some waiver wire targets to add to your teams here today. Wanted to do this quick week 5 recap for you, get it out here tonight so that you guys can start planning for your waiver wires accordingly. But ask me any question down below. Tell me how your team did. And like I said, I got a special message for all you subscribers. Thank you so much for getting us to 1,000 subs. It means the absolute world. We're going to continue to provide the best fantasy football content week in and week out. So we will be going live this week on Wednesday night. So make sure you tune into that. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and can't wait to continue growing this community with you guys as well. It means the world that you're here tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.